Well, in the quest for cyber protection, Apple rolled out a new two-step verification system to protect users' personal information. The process requires the user to log into their Apple account. Then a code will be sent from Apple to one of their trusted devices. The user then has to take that code and put it into their account in order to access their personal information. This security addition came after a number of high-profile hacks, including senior writer for Wired, Matt Honan. But it appears even this security measure has a flaw. The Apple users who have not yet enabled this security measure are in more danger of being hacked. All it takes is a person's email address and their birth date, and the hacker can actually reset your password. Now, Apple officials say that they have corrected the problem, but what guarantees are there that aren't other vulnerabilities that exist in this system? Senior writer for The Verge, Tim Carmody, joins me now. Hi there, Tim. You're the one that discovered this breach in the first place. How did you do it?
Well, I should be clear, I did not discover it. So it was my colleague, Chris Welch, found it. But it had actually been published on the open web on a site used by hackers and people interested in making these kinds of exploits.
All right. Well, how is this problem fixed, Tim? Is it fixed?
Well, what had happened was the vulnerability was in a password reset function. And Apple, before two-step verification, the other security information they had was they would ask you personal questions. This allowed, but if you forgot the answers to the personal questions, you could do it with your email address and date of birth. This was a URL script or a URL syntax that allowed the user to bypass those questions. So all you needed was your email address and date of birth.
And this two-step verification process, does it really make Apple users any safer?
It makes them somewhat safer because, again, if your password is reset, then if you don't have two-step verification, if someone manages to reset your password, then they can log in immediately and have access to a wide range of data. If you have two-step verification enabled, then they need access either to those codes or to a device that you actually have. So they can't access it remotely. So it's marginally safer, but that's not the only weak spot in Apple's security systems.
As we have discovered and many others have discovered. Now, we buy these high-tech devices to connect ourselves to the world. But is there such a thing as a device that connects us to the world without forcing us to connect our personal information to these companies?
It's really difficult. I mean, again, if you think about the iPod years ago, all that you had wasn't connected to the net at all. Increasingly, these devices are being used to manage our identity. They're backing themselves up over the net and being stored remotely in the cloud. And I think that's one of the issues that Apple's facing, is that as they move from a hardware company really into a cloud-based company that's dealing with much more personal information than before, they really have to get serious about security. So, and the trade-off is that our devices do know more about us than ever before, that they provide so many more services than ever before, and particularly these lightweight mobile devices are able to do so much more in terms of computing without necessarily having to store all of the data on your phone. So that's the dilemma that we're faced with. That's the new security challenge, is trying to find a way to spread that data across lots of devices, but at the same time keep that data secure.
And Tim, piggybacking off of what you were just talking about, news just came out that Apple can locate us indoors after spending $2 million in a Silicon Valley startup that can find you right down to the floor and the room of the building that you're in. How does this kind of play into how we should feel about these security vulnerabilities, or does it?
Well, one of the things that if you had been able to reset your Apple ID password, one of the things that that could do would be to find your phone or to find your Mac, and that would allow anyone who'd hacked your password to be able to locate you, even if that actually depends on you still having the device that you would use to secure with two-step verification. So, I mean, there's lots of really interesting sort of online, offline things happening with security. It's not just somebody accessing your information and getting your credit card data. They can access your information and get the data that you've stored on your phone. They can access your information and actually physically locate you, depending on which of these services you have turned on by default. And so I think that's the other thing that users and companies have to come to grips with is that the kinds of security breaches and the kinds of motivations of people who are looking to exploit these holes in security are becoming much more varied and unpredictable.
And finally, Tim, sometimes when these security breaches are shown, the people who actually find these breaches can be prosecuted or otherwise punished, partially because of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act that hasn't been really updated since 1986. Do you think that prosecuting these people will actually help?
Well, I mean, there are different cases. There are edge cases, and I think this is one of the other issues that's going to be decided in law. Some of it comes down to this issue of authorizing a computer without access. What constitutes that in the age of the World Wide Web? Not just, again, wire transfers that are being made via computer, sort of back-end banking things. And I think the benefit of these prosecutions, such as it is that it's forcing the issue of this law, and it's forcing appellate courts and other lawyers to really deal with what the nuances of this law are and what they should be.
It'll be interesting to see how they actually change this law and what it means for the people that actually do discover these. Tim Carmody, senior writer at The Verge, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.